thing that was interesting for me in our discussions of this idea of solving, like thinking of
Hmm.
some of the challenges of new ways to solving and new insights into what can be done with these technologies, that I feel
Hmm.
like you discussed with me that it's potentially a different kind of approach than other parts of
Hmm.
the world so far. And if you can touch on that a bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things I would say was very key to us starting out was that, whenever people heard things like virtual reality, they'd be like, oh, gaming, entertainment. And we were like, no, you will understand that there is much more that we can do with this. Anyway, so we were very passionate about helping people understand that there were an almost limitless range of use cases. Like we used to say, you are only limited by your imagination in terms of sort of like what vertical you could apply it to. And when we came to the hackathons, because remember when I was talking about sort of like our three focus areas, that third one we were always looking for ways in which we could like apply these technologies for the benefit of society. We took that mindset into the hackathons. And so we would say to the
And that
hackers,
being
can you create
education. That's what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we would say, can you create a solution for education or healthcare or tourism, right? Areas where, we knew that there would be some meaningful outcome for everyone. And so we've seen that. And over time, it's very interesting. In 2022, we put out this Africa XR report, which was the first comprehensive sort of like mapping of the ecosystem on the continent. And it's shown what we've been seeing through the years, that sort of like the number one area that people build solutions for, on the continent is education, right? That's the area where people are saying, okay, how can we deploy this? How can we make a change? This is where we see so much potential. And there's definitely been that. I mean, I will say sort of like on the flip side of that is that, you'll see a lot more funding initiatives going into like the creative economy. And so artists can kind of like, step into that space with XR. But then when it just comes to pure building, a lot of it has been education.
Do you have a favorite education example that you can share, or a couple of favorites? I mean, it's one of those, you can't have a favorite child, but it's like,
Yes, I can't. I can't.
is there more than one, that are
I,
good?
I mean, I'll talk about a few. So, for example, we run an education initiative called We Are for Schools, where we started going into public schools in Lagos in Nigeria in 2017. And just to give you context about what sort of like environment that would be, the public school system is where the majority of children go, and the classrooms on average in a state like Lagos, you'd have maybe like 80 students, 90 students, but it's like sort of like basic, right? So it's just chairs, tables, and a black or whiteboard. That's it. And one teacher. So as you can imagine, those teachers have just so much work to do. And for us, obviously, the technology is fantastic when you try it out, like everybody's excited. But we were like, what can it do to make a difference so that a child who is in that school system gets the sort of education, right? That is a oh, hey, maybe it will even surpass like what you would find in our elite schools, right? How do we get all children closer to SDG 4? That was the question for us.
What's SGG for? Just
And it's the Quality Education SDG of the United Nations, yeah.
which you're a
And
part of,
it's in
right?
the
Even,
UN.
yes, aren't you
No, no,
working with them?
yes, yes. So we did work with UNICEF in 2019 on our VR for Schools initiative, and that was then we partnered with a local school in Lagos, a local public school. We worked with the teachers. We brought them into the lab. We gave them time, experience the technology. Tell us what you think about it. Tell us if you think it can help you, and and they they enjoyed it, and they were like, okay, so let's see, can you do a few things for us? So for example, the physical and health education teacher said to us, one of the things I would love to be able to do is take my students, on field trips or visits. We're doing non-communicable diseases, and I'd love for them to go to a hospital and be able to speak to a doctor and to find out more about these diseases and not just read about it in a book. And it's like, okay, so what's an easy way that we can do that for you? And then we were like, okay, well, we'll take a 360 camera, we'll go to a hospital, we'll set the doctor down, we'll report that, and we'll bring the experience back, so so your students can experience that. The maths teacher said, I teach my students algebraic expressions, but that's one that's really difficult for them. It's almost like, a lot of people struggle with the abstractness. How can I like bring it home and make it relevant and tangible? And so we, created an experience where like there are all of these dating interactions where you're like leveraging elements of, algebraic expressions to sort of like get through the day. So it was things like that, right? Like being able to co-create that with the teachers. So that's one example. But there are so many kind of like other people who are really doing amazing things. In Ghana, there's Nubian VR who are looking at really exciting ways to teach vocational stuff around electricity and electronics, which is work that I'll be looking out for and trying to get that into secondary schools. In Rwanda, there's an initiative around Augmented Futures, which was looking at augmented reality to teach children as well in sort of like the junior secondary school years. There's really exciting stuff happening in South Africa in some of the universities and in some school systems. And there's a project I heard about recently where they're looking at a smart classroom where they're leveraging VR headsets in South Africa as well. So, there are a whole bunch of initiatives happening where it's like, rah. But I think one thing where probably, if you are in the space on the continent that you're very keen to see, is to be able to have a rigorous study conducted so that we can actually gather empirical evidence that will allow us to determine the impact on learning outcomes. I mean, I think this is data that would then allow for significant shifts in sort of like policy and spending when it comes to education. And for us, that's a key priority.